everyone! Today's science video goes along with exploration number 2, which is called Then and Now. So we're going to be looking at some different fossils and comparing them to some creatures like plants or animals that exist today and drawing comparisons. So we are going to be answering questions number 5, 7, 8, and 10 today that go along with exploration number 2, and then you can look to the next video to finish exploration number 3. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and let's get started. So to get started, I'm just going to go through the reading, then and now. Our first headline is Seeing the Past. We can use the structures of an organism's body to tell where it lived. But how similar to today's organisms are animals that lived millions of years ago? The pairs of pictures below show fossils and illustrations of what the real organisms may have looked like. Observe each pair closely. So on the left side, we have the fossil, and on the right side, we have a predicted image of what that would look like today. So on the left side here, we see what looks like a plant, and it's actually a fern. Photos are a little bit dark. I'll include, when I'm finished reading the fern section, some pictures of ferns and so on and so forth with some of the other things that I'm reading. The fossil is of a plant called a fern. Ferns are ancient plants that were around hundreds of millions of years ago. There are many types of ferns today too, but most of them grow in places that are warm and moist. It is easy to spot the delicate leaves or fronds of a fern plant. So out of the other, we're looking at an elk, and we're also going to look at a mosasaur. Out of those three, the fern is the only one that is still around today. Different species of ferns, not the exact fern that's in this fossil, but there are other species of ferns that are still around today, and they're very common. The next one is the elk. The fossil skeleton is of an Irish elk. The elk was the largest of an extinct type of deer that lived in Europe and Asia about 2.5 million years ago. You can see the elk's slender legs and massive antlers, up to 4 meters or 13 feet from tip to tip. And you can start to draw comparisons between the elk, the Irish elk, and animals that are still around today, like a moose or a deer, or there are other species of elk that are still around today as well. So there are relatives that are still existing today and are not extinct. Next, we are looking at the mosasaur. The fossil skeleton is of a mosasaur. The mosasaurs are an extinct group of reptiles. They had long, narrow bodies and long snouts. The snout is this part here. The mosasaurs had short, flattened limbs that looked like paddles. Now, this is a little bit dark, so I'll include a picture of it as well. But the paddles, I would assume they're for swimming, right? Like if you're in the pool sometimes and you have those little paddles that you put on your feet that make you tread water a little bit easier, I relate them to fins like that. So that shows me that this was an aquatic animal. It lived in the water. So to answer number 5, complete each sentence using the best word or phrase from the bank. We only have 3 blanks, so we're not going to use all of the words. Most plants, such as ferns, live on blank. Deer and their relatives, such as the Irish elk, use their slender blank to walk through forests and meadows. Okay, what do animals use to walk? The petal-like limbs of the mosasaur helped it move through blank. Hey, I already thought about the answer to that question. Most plants, such as ferns, live on, the answer to that is land. So ferns aren't like seaweed or different other types of grasses that grow in the water. The fern is a land-dwelling plant. Deer and their relatives use their slender legs to move, just like we use our legs to move. And the paddle-like limbs of the mosasaur helped it move through water. There's also in the water. That wouldn't make sense to say moved through in the water. It's just water here. I like the heading for this page, Cousins. Sometimes fossils can be the ancestors of modern day organisms, or they can be similar looking organisms. So in number 7, once again, you're looking at some very dark photographs, but you can make do. Draw a line from the image of the fossil in the first column to the image of the modern organism it most closely resembles in the second column. Starting here, I see antlers, and I see antlers in this image here, so I'm going to connect those two. In this bottom image, I jumped right to that one because I see the leaves of the fern and then a modern day fern here. And then this is probably the hardest picture to see, so by process of elimination, you can connect it here. And this is actually a fish. Number 8 says, what features helped you match them up? Well, the first thing I saw was the antlers. So I'm going to write I matched the elk to this looks like a moose, because they both have antlers. Next, I matched the ferns because they both had leaves. And finally, by process of elimination, I matched these two, but you can kind of see that there are like the flippers of the mosasaur, and we saw it in the other picture too that it had flippers. And I can see this picture a little bit clearer in my teacher book that this is a fish with flippers. So I matched them because they both swim. So I matched the mosasaur and fish because they both swim. And that's it. Our last section for today is down here. You do not have to complete number 9, so you can skip that part, luckily, because you can't even see the picture. So we're finishing off with number 10, kind of wrapping it all up, putting it together. Everything that we were thinking about, clues from the past and present to help us with then and now and relating those two things together. So read the paragraph and choose the correct words to complete each sentence. We're going to write the words on the line. Once again, more words than we're going to have to use because we only have 5 lines. We learn about the organisms of long ago from blank. Let's take that one. Let's unpack that one first. We learn about the organisms of long ago from, first thing I'm looking is photographs. And that could make sense as an answer, but we want the best answer here, the answer that makes the most sense. Remains. So the remains are what's left over of an animal or creature. That could also make sense. From animals, no. From the same, that does not make sense. I'm seeing 3 other terms that might make sense. So you could argue photographs, remains, bones, skeletons, fossils. All of those would make sense, but fossils really encompasses the skeletons, the bones, and the remains, and like the shapes. So fossils would be the best answer here. Because that leads us into the next sentence. They are, so we're talking about fossils. What are fossils? They are the blank or traces of organisms that lived in the past. Now, in order to get the correct answer here, you really have to know the exact definition of fossils, and it is on page 484, which is from Exploration 1. A fossil is the remains or traces of an organism. So we have to put the word remains here. Even though there's other words that could work, like you could argue like to put bones there, but that's not really encompassing every fossil because not every fossil is bones. There are other types of fossilized creatures as well. So remains is our best word for that spot. Many animals alive today have structures that are similar to blank that lived in the past. I'm looking through the words that might make sense. Skeletons that lived in the past, no. Shapes that lived in the past, animals that lived in the past. The similarities suggest that the organisms are blank. Are different? No. It suggests that they're very similar. Infer means to guess. That doesn't make sense. That the organisms are shapes? No. That the organisms are related. They're relatives of each other because they look so similar. They're part of the same lineage or family line. When we study today's organisms, we can blank things about related organisms of the past. And this is what we're doing in this entire lesson 2, is making inferences based on fossils. So we're inferring. We're making educated guesses based on what we see using the knowledge that we have. So all of the blanks are filled in, and that is all for today's video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have an awesome day.